Welcome to Isn't It Obvious, where things are obvious. That's going to be the intro.
That's gonna be the intro forever now.
Right.
Welcome to Isn't It Obvious? I'm your host, Sera. Joining us is Phil and Micah. And took me all day to figure out this topic.
Superman versus Incredible Hulk, isn't it?
Absolutely not.
Who would win?
So my topic is... No, get out of here with your... My topic is, isn't it obvious that it's nearly impossible to describe a sensory experience to a person who hasn't shared that experience?
By definition, yes.
I mean, no argument? Do I have to pick another topic?
No, I mean, so you're trying to, like, for example...
Explain a circle to a person who's been blind their entire life.
You just draw a circle on their face. They'll feel it.
Okay.
All right, well, thank you. You can
Thank
listen
you for
to us
joining
every
us,
Monday.
everyone. Well, I was just thinking about, like, okay.
Be careful, it's hot. It's 360 degrees.
Let me tell you guys a story. Not really much of a story, but I was trying to describe the flavor of an herb to someone, and I was having difficulty because I couldn't describe what it tasted like without having, like, I couldn't.
I mean, it was mint.
Like,
it tasted minty and mint and fresh, and
well,
it was mint.
Because it was more uncommon. I think it was actually no, this wasn't an herb. This was a smell. I think this was a smell. And
mint.
Sorry, cat bothering me again.
It's either mint or chicken.
Exactly.
No, it was I was talking to my aunt actually, and we were talking about smells. That's what it was. And I was trying to describe what sandalwood smells like, or like that scent.
It's soap, but more woody.
It's like at a really nice luxury spa, and you come out, and it's like, wow. I've never been to a luxury spa. I can't describe
how
it.
do you?
It's
how you
imagine people walking around in sandals' feet smells before you actually smell it.
That's not even close.
It's more like a building that's like full of really nice-looking people, and they're like, "Please, sir, you have to leave." And you're like, "Okay, cool." And that's what that building smells like.
You remember those medieval doctors who wore the crow masks that were just filled with flowers? That's what sandalwood smells like. Just nothing but shit and decay around you, and the small bouquet of flowers a foot away from your nose so you don't get diseased.
No, so...
We're not helping because it's incredibly fucking difficult to explain sensory perceptions to someone who hasn't experienced that sensory perception.
It's a new car smell.
The best I could come up with was it's a fragrant wood. And that doesn't
all wood is
help
fragrant.
At all.
Cut into a maple, it's fucking fragrant.
Some are more fragrant than others. Like cedars, like got a very specific smell, right? Or like laurel bark has a specific smell.
Redwood smells like chicken.
No.
Cedar smells like really...
That's another thing. Like smells like chicken taste. Like that's different though. Like
no, it smells like a chicken smells. I'm not saying it's cooked chicken. I'm saying an uncooked chicken smells like a redwood tree.
So I think most tree smells, the way I describe it, is like going to a really nice wood shop, and then there's this like really buff guy, and he's like making all this wood stuff.
Is that relevant for the smell?
It is. And
he's also wearing way too much cologne.
It's a mix of early Axe body spray and just gym sweat after he benched 350 10 times.
It's definitely Old Spice, but it's not.
It's Old
too
Spice.
much.
It's new Old Spice.
It's too much.
It's
too much.
It's not the newest Old Spice. It's the older Old Spice, but not Old Spice.
It's like 50% too much of the new old, but not quite Old Spice. And he's making a canoe, and he looks at you, and he's like, "You need to make your own paddle," and that's what cedar smells like.
You have weird fantasies, Phil. Not to yuck your yum, but...
Well, all right. I tried really hard on this topic, you guys, but I guess we'll have to move on to another one.
No,
I've got more.
Okay.
I've got
no,
more.
we cannot pivot. We are sunk into...
No, wait, we can.
No,
I have two other ones
that
are very obvious.
This is not how
we established this
really
at 2 microwaves. All right?
Yeah.
When a topic is began, we see it through.
You guys don't want to talk about pillows?
No, we see it through.
No, we have to save them for another time because we have no listeners now at this point after my explanation of what cedar smells like. So it's just us now. And
I tried to make it funny, Phil, but you weren't really yes-ending.
I try. The issue I have with experience is that it's very difficult to it's not just a sensory experience, but it's also experience in general, right? I mentioned this in our previous podcast that it's hard to explain things as simple as pain to somebody, right? And that's a
Yeah.
pretty important thing to be able to convey. Like, how much pain are you feeling? And you're like,
On a scale of 1 to 10, you're like, whose scale?
right, and like, I'm feeling a 10 right now, doc, and it's like,
You
nah,
broke a femur? Yes. Do
nah,
you see this hangnail?
yeah. So there's no like good way of even sharing just
I
experiences
know. We
by
we
itself,
have
not just
standardized
sensory.
experiences that people go through.
We force people to consume every herb,
At
and we
least, like,
we force people to smell every
so
smell.
I don't know if you had
like on a
this
list.
in middle school, but there was like exploratory first period in like 6th grade, and they were like month-long classes that were just, yeah, we're gonna build a birdhouse in shop class, and we're gonna do it in 4 weeks, kind of thing. And you just have something like that. So you have like, since home ec isn't a thing because that's a really stupid title for just like a class about living and sustaining yourself.
Still
Oh, very
important.
much so. It just shouldn't be degraded to home economics.
Yeah, I agree. It's a bad
Yeah.
title.
Homes.
It should be called the
No,
most
no, no.
important
Yeah,
class in this
it should
in this
be.
school.
Apart from like tax
Life's-
class,
just
I think
how-
that should be the most important class. Like doing your own taxes.
house skills.
I think
maybe.
just living. Yeah.
Life skills.
We're gonna make macaroni and cheese, not from a box. Like that's a life skill.
We're gonna make our own. We're gonna make our own
Yeah.
pasta.
Well, I mean,
Oof.
you're gonna buy the elbow macaroni. We're not maniacs here.
I mean,
We're not Le
some
Cordon
people
Bleu.
make their own pasta.
You go to college for that shit. We're talking about middle school.
Fair.
You get a block of cheese.
probably- I mean,
you get
it's
a
not
block of cheese, some heavy cream, and elbow
That
noodles.
hard to make. It's not that hard to make like linguine noodles. Probably won't look.
All right,
super
explain
nice,
how you make linguine noodles to someone who hasn't made linguine noodles. Let's see how this experimental example
Well,
works.
I don't have the like recipe in front of me, but
If
like,
it's so easy, Sarah.
just it's flour, egg, and
You can only,
I
oh,
don't
by the
know.
way, only use interpretive dancing through the podcast.
You have to explain it as though you don't have a tongue.
all right.
See,
well,
you're using your tongue.
sign. I'm gonna sign to you guys, but the listeners can't see this, so I'm narrating right now.
I just for the
I'm gonna
listeners,
sign. Google it.
no middle fingers were presented during this message. Okay, I lied.
Yeah, Micah.
But like
picked up my slack there.
for a long time, because I didn't know cilantro flavoring when I just would eat cilantro, that it never clicked with me what the flavor of cilantro was. So if I were to try to like, someone would be like, "Is this cilantro any good?" I'll be like, yes," because I didn't know.
50-50,
Yeah.
yes or no?
And recently, I've, through painful experience and interpretive dance,
Experimentation.
I have found out that it is. I do get the slightly soapy sensation, but I kind of like that soapy sensation.
I need to invite you over sometime, Micah, to come fondle my herbs.
Sarah, you
That
are a woman
did
of
not
integrity.
come right. I was just that was a roller coaster of a sentence.
Sometimes you just need
Does this
to
count as
just
workplace
rub your
harassment?
fingers on
Does this
some
count as
leaves.
workplace
It just-
harassment, Phil?
It does. As your legal counsel, I have to say that you need to immediately start talking.
As our CEO,
Cease-
CFO, and HR department.
Cease the invitations to come
CEO
smell
of the
some sage.
As a CEO of the podcast, please continue. No, I have a big problem with the scratch and sniff books as a kid because like I always thought they were so stupid. Like, hey, have a book, and then you take like a little penny. Not that anyone has coins anymore, and
Or
you
just
like.
use your nails. It's your book, right?
I didn't like to have
Yeah.
that gunk in between
That-
my nails,
that's
like
just
underneath my
uncomfortable.
nails. It just, yeah, that's too much.
I mean, it was your book, though, right?
No, it's
No,
still
no,
the
it
shit
was
on
the
your
like-
book, or was this a
fingernails.
library book?
No,
I got all my
This
is-
scratch
No,
and sniffs at the library, but
so
Okay, because then if it was a library book, then I can totally understand
No,
the
it's-
use of money.
coins just more
I
efficient.
remember in grade school they would give you like this terrible like flimsy book, like a scholastic thing, but it wasn't bound. It was just like had staples to hold it together.
That was just the Great
Yeah.
And
Gatsby.
then like, look, Yes, but also when you open the Great Gatsby book and then there's this like scratch and sniff that comes out of it, and then the kids was like, "This is what a lemon smells like," and then they would scratch it and like, "Ah, it doesn't smell like a lemon at all." It's like, oh, and I'm like, "Oh, this is so silly. Like, why would people do this?" And now I'm like, maybe they should do it, but for things that are a little bit more odd, like
Or there should at
sandalwood
least be
or
Durian.
there should be like
mm,
a standard list of
lychee.
smells that people need to know what they are,
There was also this episode on
like rotten eggs.
I think it was Planet Money on NPR, where this is like 10 years ago. They were trying to export more fruit from India to America, and there's a lot of fruit that you can't um, transport across international lines because of reasons. But a lot of the people are saying, hey, like the fruit selection in the United States is terrible, and you really haven't had a pear or this type of melon unless you had it at that place in South America or India. And in my head, like they're trying to explain why this other thing is so much better. They're like, oh, it just tastes great and it's just fantastic. And like none of these words really kind of would like move me to be like, no, I think our laws are fine. Like, so you want to have a fancy like thing to eat? I guess I don't like. I guess I really don't know enough to either say yes or no. But my status quo is just no. So let's just keep our laws because I'm sure they were right to begin with. And they're like, oh no,
Here's
but
a
the
hint, Phil.
fruit is
They
really
weren't.
good. Well, I only thought it was weird that um, when I was traveling, you couldn't bring unpasteurized cheese, and I had come from Amsterdam, and then like my dad asked for cheese, so I bought this wheel of cheese, and then like I was trying to like bring it in from Amsterdam to like uh, you know, Minneapolis St. Paul Airport, and then the customs guy like said, "Stop, like where were you and what were you doing and all this stuff."
Why do you have this cheese?
And then they're like, "Did you bring any fruit or food with you?" And I was like, "No, I didn't bring anything with me." And they're like, "Yes, you did. What did you bring?" And I was like, "I brought cheese." And then they're like, "Get the
No,
fuck
you
out
should
of
have said,
here!"
I bought a wax sculpture at a store. I guess
Like,
I don't know what is giving it its support, but I just thought it was a very nice wax wheel.
I need somebody that has the confidence to lie to authority. Like, he just clearly saw through me like this guy's up to no good. And he's like, "What did you bring back from you with from Amsterdam that you shouldn't have brought here?" I
Oh,
was
they
like,
knew. They
I
knew.
was like, "Oh my god, it was really bad, officer. It was cheese." And they're like, "Get the fuck out of here,
Oh,
man!" Like later on, I was like, "Were they looking for something?" Oh, it doesn't matter.
you
I
were
got
in
my cheese.
Amsterdam, sir. What did you bring back with you? Cheese.
And it's like,
He's not going to admit to it. All right, fine. Just go. Get out of here. You get.
just get the fuck out of here. And it was really good cheese. But like, I can't explain
Well, it's illegal
to
cheese. Of
people like
course it was
why.
good.
I,
Illicit cheese.
You were
but
committing a
again, it's
crime
like
on that
really
cracker.
hard. Well, the thing is that this was safe to eat, like safe to bring cheese because it wasn't illegal. It was straight up like pasteurized cheese. But Amsterdam, and I was like, why am I
Big
buying this?
craft on
Like,
it.
yeah, it's like safe to bring to the U.S. Like that was his tagline or something. I'm like, I guess I'll get this cheese because I don't want to get in trouble. But I forgot to write like that I had food with. Anyway, it's not like really worth it because it's hard to explain to somebody why you're acting crazy to take risks for food. And it's like, oh, because it smells good. It's like, okay, I mean, that's it. No, but it tastes really, really good. Like, you really have to try the fried chicken in Korea. It's really good. It's like,
do, do
I'm
okay,
do
sure it
they
I'm
use
is.
sure it's
a
fine. It's
breaded
like,
coating and
yes,
a type of adhesive to get that breaded coating onto the chicken?
I
It's the
And
MSG,
think
guys.
and
the
It's
then
just
do they
the
put
oil
it
salt.
in
is just,
oil to cook it?
but I think the oil is like not allowed in the States. Like it's the old 1980s oil that you can't have here in the States anymore that makes it
It's too
so good.
delicious. It's
Unless
too
you worked at
delicious.
McDonald's and his grandfather did.
Exactly.
I think they changed their oil. Like I remember in the 80s, like the fries were so good. And now as an adult, I'm like, the fries are still good, but not as good
Well,
as when I
they
was a
took out
kid.
less sugar.
Pretty.
Yeah,
Yeah, I was gonna
they
say it was the
added
sugar
way
that
the
was
hell
making
more
it
sugar in the
super good.
80s. And that's why it was
Hmm.
fucking crack. You were eating like cake. You're eating potato cakes in fry form.
God,
It's
Mhm.
not delicious. So good.
but yeah, I don't understand the point of cooking shows. Like to your point, Sarah, it's like, oh, well, how do you explain an experience, a sensory one? I'm like, who is watching these cooking shows? Like, I, I mean, I don't understand the purpose of it. Like, okay, but what are you
Micah's
getting?
watching them.
It's
He's
the
raising
same
his hands.
reason why I watch some sports. It's the same reason why I watch, you know, some like content creators that certainly play games better than I do. I'm shit at it, and I want to see it done well, with the illusion that I indeed could be well at it, with the absolute understanding that I know I can't.
Okay, it's fine for sports, fine for like games, but like cooking, like there's no, it's just a visual look. Like you don't
So,
know what the steak is gonna taste like. You just had this guy
so,
and an
but
actor that
here's,
goes,
but
Eat with
here's,
your eyes
here's the
first,
thing with
though.
the cooking show. Well, no, you eat with your memory first. And here's the thing: is when you're watching these cooking shows, most of you who are watching it have eaten something with the ingredients that are used. Like most of the things they make on these cooking shows aren't completely
I will
novel to
say,
you.
Snail Week does bring back a
Um,
lot of vivid memories.
But like, did the snail like if have you ever had snail?
No,
I've
why the
never
hell
had
would I eat
snail.
a snail?
If I were to see someone,
it's so
why not?
delicious.
That's
I
just
Look,
mean,
you
it's
no.
guys
That's
just
have
just
to
all
eat
the
it's
it.
just
It's
a
butter.
super
it's just a
tasty.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. It's just a
it's
vessel
butter
for
with a bit
butter.
of protein.
No,
But
it's so
but
good.
but if
It's a
someone
butter
were
drenched clam.
making if someone were making snail on a cooking show, I wouldn't probably find that very interesting because I don't have the experience of eating snail. So, but when they're like making like a pasta dish using ingredients that like I've had, even if they aren't all combined together or made in the same way, I can kind of be like, oh yeah, that
Well,
looks like it could be good. I
what
could try
about
that. I
with
could dig that.
Great British
And
Baking Show when they have their showstoppers? So that is
uh,
very little about taste, and that's more about presentation.
yeah, and that to me isn't that's just art. That is not I'm not there. I don't when I see that I don't look at it and say,
So
I want
you're
to eat
saying
that.
there's no other artistry in other aspects of those cooking shows?
I feel like it's so gimmicky, right? Like the
I'm
whole,
not saying that,
I feel like
but
it
you're
is
right.
because the point of it is like I don't get the point of it because it should be about the experience of eating the food, but then it's not. It's just like the picture of the food. It's like that old. There was this Garfield episode back in the 90s I used to watch, and Garfield was so hungry that he started eating the pages of the cookbook. Because like that reminds me of this. It's like, what is the point of watching this cooking show if you're not gonna actually able to experience it in the dimension that it matters? And it's the same for like sommeliers like who are good at judging wines. They're like, oh, it has this note and it's this type of sour and this type of sweet, and I'm like, I don't understand what you're saying, pal. Like, is it a good wine?
Well, it
Is it a
depends.
bad
Do
wine?
you like
And
the 87 Shiraz type of sour, or are you more of like a 93 Malbec sweetness?
look, you don't need to shout out numbers and insult my intelligence. Just
No,
let me know, man.
Micah
Like,
doesn't
it's
is
know
it
like
what
with
the
good
hell
or
our
he's
bad?
sommeliers,
talking
they just
about.
fucking lie. It is such a
I,
prestigious, like, so little percentage of the people that they give advice to actually care, because they just want the prestige of, we'll ask the sommelier. We are at a restaurant of which a
Yeah,
sommelier is an
probably.
employee, and we now can ask the sommelier what a good wine is. Is it a proper vintage? Was it a sherry cask or an oak cask? And they can make up whatever the fuck they want, because whomever's drinking that does not know.
it doesn't.
Is it going to get me
It really
drunk? Cool.
bothers me
$3 check.
because, yeah, it should be like, is it good or is it bad? It's like a very thumbs
But
up,
that's
thumbs
also a
down.
very subjective
And
thing,
people
which
have
is why you
different
have
tastes.
the, 5-point system.
So it's not all
Oh
completely
no, it's still
bullshit
completely bullshit.
because
It's
like
wine. It's all
I
garbage.
don't think so. No, I mean I don't I think a lot of it could be a bunch of flowery bullshit, but I think there is like some underlying um, rhyme to the reason, right? There's like if you're looking for a Chardonnay, you want it to be a certain flavor body,
Is
certain
Chardonnay red or white?
white.
Pink.
Anyway,
I thought that was a Merlot.
The best wines are pink. You just mix it red and white and be like, I'm good for steak and fish now.
a Merlot. Never mind it.
Uh,
Forget it. It's fine.
can I play dumb
We're not
enough
gonna
with
go all.
wine
We're
that
not gonna
Sarah's
go
head
too
will
deep.
explode?
We're not gonna go delving into wine. Maybe we should dumb it down to beer. Let's do it to beer.
Okay.
Because we all know
fingers.
what those are. We all have our. Mike is like, excuse me, expert here.
Should know. I've had 8
Expert
different
alcoholic
cans
here.
today.
That's the thing is like so when you're asking someone who works at a liquor store who you presume has probably tried some of the product, what a good beer is. Well, they're going to first ask you, well, what kind of beers do you know you like, or what, what's like? Do you like stouts? Do you like porters? Like darker beers, or do you like lagers? Do you like something that's hoppy? Do you like IPAs? Like they're going to ask you those questions, right?
What if I was a Supreme Court justice and just looked at him in the eye and said, "I
Then
like
you'd be
beer."
an alcoholic who is not qualified for the current job that he has.
Well, if you like beer,
I like beer. I like beer and lifted weights with squee.
why don't we walk over to the beer aisle and we'll just load up your cart?
They'd be like, "Thank
So,
you, good sir."
do you like American
there you
beer
go.
or
No questions
American
needed.
beer?
That's a really good
The
question.
one without the
then you're
I
gonna
will
want
defer to
Coors,
my
not
clerks
Bud
and for
Light.
precedence. I agree with you, Sarah, that like the clerk is gonna just say like, okay, what do you like in relativity, right? It all
Yeah,
circles back
it's
to
all a shared experience,
yeah.
like of knowing what something else might taste like to compare to what you might like that you haven't tried. It's all you can do.
When it comes to not food things, so I had this kind of this argument or discussion with my old man, and I've been kind of like trying my best to convince my uh, Patreon supporter to go out and travel, right? They're getting pretty up there in age, and I'm like, look, you have some funds, you're retired. Why don't you just go to Rome, Stonehenge, and like the touristy traps, and just go there and see? And then they're like, yeah, we saw it on television. I'm like, yeah, but it's not the same. Like, you should go there and really experience these monumental type of places in Europe and really kind of enjoy that experience. And they're like, nah. And I'm like, but look, what do you have really to lose? Like, you don't have, like, they may have, I hope, 10 more good years left, right? Like, I don't want them to
So
perish
of
without
those
having
3,000
some good
some odd
experiences in
days, they're going
traveling.
to spend a day in the southwest of England looking at some stones.
Yeah, that was my father's argument. Was
Ooh,
like,
we're
yeah,
going to
hard
go to
pass.
Rome,
No, like,
one
yeah,
of the
but this
busiest,
is
most congestive cities in the world, and we're going to look at some stone.
yeah. He was very like, this is totally not worth it. You couldn't pay me to do this. And I'm like, but it's not just looking at it from like looking at a picture and being like, yeah, that's good enough, right? Like, there's a difference in feeling it. Like, I feel like there's a problem with uh, the fact that people can kind of conjure an image in their head versus really feeling that experience. And the people that are stunted in not being able to have enough relativity to experience enough have troubles with perhaps things like empathy or sympathy or
So
walking in other
having not
people's
seen
shoes. Like,
Stonehenge
there's
in
this
real
type of,
life
Less
means I can't
imagination.
empathize with someone who has?
I think there's a symptom of it, right? Like the
They're
idea
not
that like,
well. Like, okay, Micah, if you were given a chance
To
to go,
Stonehenge?
would you go?
No, there are better places.
Yeah, but if you were
So
given
I'm on a
chance to
game
go see
show,
Stonehenge,
and
would you take it?
I mean, yeah,
Yep. You win a prize. You
I
win a
would.
trip.
I
Would you go?
probably wouldn't go to Stonehenge on the day that the trip was planned for Stonehenge because it's Stonehenge. What do I really care about Stonehenge? If I can't piss on the
That's-
walls or try
that's
and
what
push
I
them
said.
All right,
over,
well,
why am I
think
there?
I think we have established. I think we've established that Micah has the least amount of imagination.
No, I would
and
rather
the least amount of
see
empathy of the three
like
of us.
more like no
according to my theory.
Notre Dame would be
According to
more
Phil's theory.
interesting to see, especially now because it's under construction and they're trying to do it in the ways it was done in the 1400s. That would be way more interesting to me, with my interest in architecture, as opposed to a bunch of stones that, because human beings were so fucking bored a millennia ago, they dragged them for 500 miles using trees as wheels. That is not as interesting an engineering feat to me than a church that took a century to build.
I think you might be mistaken. I think you might be mistaken on the purpose or points of why those stones were dragged however many.
Not thousands of miles. They were from like the south of Wales.
I don't know. Whatever.
It might as well have been 1,000 miles.
No, then they would have gone across the
because
channel. Then it
it's
would be
ridiculous.
How did they get these
We all
tunnels
know
across
the
the
reason
water?
why Stonehenge exists is because it's cool to look at. And
no, it was they're communicating with aliens clearly, or they were
no. Also, if I want to communicate with aliens, we have some nice ziggurats down in Central America that are way more interesting.
Yeah, the Mayans actually made
Mhm.
it work because they disappeared. So they clearly made a gateway to the other universe.
I also watched Indiana Jones
It's
and the
almost as bad
Crystal
as me
Skull.
watching Prometheus.
Okay, why would you do this to yourself?
I'm a
Also,
glutton for
Prometheus is
punishment when
terrible.
it comes to
Look,
bad films.
I'm just gonna say that like when I say that there's a symptom of like the idea that people can get an experience of just by looking at a picture and they'd be like, yeah, that's good enough, without even comprehending that if you're actually there, it's a totally different
Potentially,
experience and
but the
feeling, right?
benefit of the technology
And
of us being able to view it in a picture and not have to be there to know that it exists plays more
I
into
think
other
that
things.
as a
Like the
secondary,
aversion of Americans traveling.
I think that as
I
a
wasn't at one point. The aversion of Americans
no, I
traveling
know. Go ahead,
is
finish.
like an insult to the rest of the world because we have the ability to, and most Americans don't really leave the country, or if they do, they're just Americans abroad.
yeah, I was gonna say too that like the difference between like I would like to go to Normandy just because it's just a thing that I want to see, right? I'm not really a military buff, but I watched Saving Private Ryan, and so I could have liked to watch
At
that and
14,
see
it
the
burned
beach
into your brain that
just
you
to
were
see
getting
what
ripped
it's like.
apart by an MG-49.
It was really the Simpsons episode where like it was a Normandy scene, and then they were selling hot dogs and Coca-Cola, and then like Homer's like I gotta go to the Z lobby, like just really like okay. Um, and I think it's a big difference between just looking at like a like a film or looking at a just a dusty textbook versus going and seeing it, right? And looking at the graveyards. I think that's a very different thing, and I feel like it's like the same analogy time would be like it would be like me eating a recipe cookbook and be like, "Oh, that's delicious." It's the same as me looking at a photo of it and being like, "Yep, that's the same." Right? Like there is something hugely missing here that it's not easy to describe using words because
But it's your
it's a sensory
also the
experience.
personal
It is.
interest in it that is giving you the imperative to want to experience it, where other people don't have that. And they will look at that food
Have
and
you
try and make it. And if it tastes bad, then they'll like put that recipe away because it wasn't how their mind's eye perceived it. So maybe some people, after they see it in a book, have this, fictional version of what it is, and don't want that ruined. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. Maybe seeing it in a picture and having your romanticized
have
version
you
of what that experience may
never mind.
be is better than going there and seeing the rope lines around Stonehenge and just the people shuffling, going, ooh. And then,
It sounds like you have an aversion. It sounds like you have an
I
aversion
mean, I
to
hate people,
crowds,
yes.
but it doesn't have to be like these tourist. It doesn't have to be these touristy trap things. Like, I don't have a real personal interest in religion, as we all know. Um, but I will say there is something very profound walking into an old church or an old temple even that has like gorgeous carving. Like like this building took a lot to create and make this artistic. Like there is something very profound about being there where I think I would not have that same experience if I was just seeing a photo of it on someone's
But
Facebook page, you know?
so is that like they
Like there
experienced
was
it or that it just randomly popped up?
so like for instance, when I went to Japan with my friend, um I saw like a bunch of images, online of like places I wanted to go see, just to, a lot of them were touristy traps, but I also picked a lot of smaller things that were little like road less traveled places. And there was one temple in Kyoto that we went to, and it's a big temple, but it wasn't very touristy. Like there wasn't a lot of people there. And when we went, I think it was just us and maybe like two other people, and like the monks were there. And it was hard to describe, is I guess all I can say is it the pictures are not
But the
they
pictures
do
piqued
not do
your
it
interest.
justice. You have to not like not even really, no. Like it was that particular place. Actually, I don't even think that was on our list of things to see. We were just walking by towards the station and we decided to stop in and look. I think that was what it was. Because there was like 3 or 4 temples there that we picked. I don't
So
think
then
that
you
was
also
the one
have
we
the mystery of
didn't go
spontaneity
to.
that makes that memory more
Happened
important.
upon. Yeah. No, it was the actual building itself that really like grabbed hold of my non-existent soul. Like just being able to go like it was so
And it wasn't
peaceful and
something you
quiet
planned
and
on. Thus, it was a
solemn.
more evocative experience because you didn't have a preconceived
But
notion of it.
no, no, because like I get the same feeling when I walk into any like place like that, even if it's
You
planned
want to
or
go
unplanned. Like it's
evangelical church hopping over the weekend and see if you still have the same act of profundity going into what used to
nah,
be an
because
elementary
there's
school that has been
no
turned into a
that's
church.
see that's different. That those are big mega structures that are like there's
There's a
nothing
Buddhist
artistic about
temple
them.
not
There's
far
nothing
from a work.
beautiful about them. They're just big. See, that I would go to because I feel like there would be a little more intentional beauty to it, whereas these mega churches for evangelicals
No,
are
no, no.
just a big stage,
They
like
were
stadium seating.
stadiums
It's
that
just
were a stage was added.
Th-
Joel
that's what I mean.
Osteen is in the
Yep.
old Houston
Yeah.
Rockets.
Go to some of the old churches in like our downtown capital. Those are really cool.
Yeah.
Like the Basilica. Like those are
Neat structures,
cool
yes.
things to
But
go see.
I don't know if that
'Cause they're
sense of
old.
profundity
They're
is with everyone. Because some people aren't wowed by that. Some people are wowed by no, but some people
some
are
people
wowed
have
at
no
going
empathy.
into US Bank
Some people
Stadium and
don't
seeing
care.
that scale. And US Bank Stadium
That's
is
true.
garbage
Yeah.
architecturally. But some people go in
Mhm.
there,
Yeah,
and that
not-
is
not
them going
impressed.
into that small temple in Kyoto. That sense of profundity is incredibly personal, and that it's tough to explain those personal things. Because what you experienced and what you find profound
Yeah,
goes over the heads or under their feet because they don't care.
there's also another problem with
No
sensory
empathy.
experiences too, where we kind of like diminish or mock others. Like when it comes to like retreats, like, oh, I went to a retreat where no one could talk to each other, and I'm thinking like, you went to a yippie retreat, right? Like this is just kind of like a joke, right? Like you're just there for tax purposes. But they're like, oh no, it's very important to me, and you get all these great experiences, and your mind is clear. And I'm like already doing a lot of terrible judgments because I'm like, this seems like a gigantic waste of your time, right? Like I'm upset for you because you've been duped. And they're like, oh no, like this is great. Like I already kind of write the story for them because I can't
But you're
sense
trying to, you're
their
just dismissing it
experience.
because you don't find interest in what that experience could bestow.
Right. And I think it's also like really kind of a terrible human behavior, but most people wouldn't even want to try new foods, even if it's in front of them. Like,
Yeah,
oh, you should try it.
my
It's like,
nephew,
yeah,
if food
no, hard
touches,
pass.
he won't eat
You
it.
know.
Trying to get him to eat squid in Vegas at just a random sushi place in one of the hotels was oh god, and him drinking scotch. All right,
Well, okay.
true.
But,
Scotch is not.
Squid
Scotch
is
delightful.
squid is unusual for.
And I don't care
for that.
Scotch is delightful.
I mean,
but,
so is squid, but like
his alcohol experience was like
some people
Fireball
are gonna be like,
and
not for
McGillicuddy's.
me.
And it's like, all right, you're gonna try the scotch. It's gonna burn a bit, and it's gonna taste a bit earthy. But just sip it and give it time. Let your tongue acclimate. And he sipped it. He's like, "This is bad," and then he just kept slamming it. And it's like, no, you just drank $30, man. I don't buy cheap scotch.
There's this. Okay, for children, like we're talking about
that's when you gotta
babies.
start drinking scotch.
There's this, at least, well, just a little bit. No, that's not good advice. Do not follow that. But the advice is that you're supposed to give them as many different types of food as possible, and they may not like it the first 7 times, but that's just a thing. And then if you don't kind of do this earlier on, it gets harder and harder for them.
Mhm.
And I feel like that's the same as a grown up, right? And so they start to get stunted in their ability to experience things more, or they're kind of like solidified in their like kind of crappy behavior that like diminishes other people's experiences, like because they don't feel it. Or it gets even worse is that like they think like me that if someone goes to retreat, we're just like, oh, you're just pulling my leg, right? So they would have no chance, even if you're very good at describing a sensory experience, it wouldn't go to them. And how the hell could you even try? Like, I think the closest thing you could do is maybe read a book about it, right? Like, that's probably the best you're gonna
Yeah.
get.
Several
Even
For a
thousand
single
words later,
experience.
thousands
you
of
might
words
have an
later,
inkling.
yeah.
You might have an inkling.
I think maybe movies, but people don't typically want to watch Schindler's List, right? Like, this is kind of heavy stuff. I
Yeah, it's something you watch
But
once
what is
and
the unique
internalize
experience from
and
Schindler's
cry a
List
little, and then
that is not in other media
It's just,
sources? How is Schindler's List different than Transformers?
I think, well, for one thing,
I would have known
Megan
better.
Fox isn't in Schindler's List.
all right. Well,
And second,
all right, you guys, get out of my house.
all right. And second is that like there's a movie for every mood, right?
What?
Transformers is delightful if
No,
you
no.
don't
The
give a
same
crap
thing
about
between Schindler's List and
watching
Transformers
what
is
you're
they're
Plot
both
watching.
difficult to go
or
through because of the terrible subject matter. One is terrible because it's sad and depressing. One is terrible because of its quality.
Look, Michael Bay isn't known for his quality. He's very much like gas station
No,
pizza. Like you kind of know what you're getting, but
that's
you're
not
there,
bad.
so you might as well
It,
like, take it.
but I think it's more gas station sushi. It might be good for a little bit of time, but you are gonna regret those bits that made you happy real quick.
Yes. Um. So yeah, I agree with you, Sarah. I actually think it's a huge problem, and I don't want to get political. Actually, that's a lie I do. But I think a lot
go
of
ahead, take it
uh,
down this road.
I think a lot of our problems is that there's a huge goddamn barrier when it comes to describing people's general experiences, right? Like people have legitimate grievances about how they're treated and what they're being judged as and how their perspectives form their life. And we dismiss them as being kind of yokels or jackasses or just ignorant, and this is a big problem because it doesn't make any sense. Like their experiences are not something to diminish, even if we can't understand it. Because again, it's hard to transfer experiences from one person to the other.
Well, and this is why I have a hard time when I dismiss religion entirely. Like other people, I am aware that they have these profound feelings about it. So, in a way, I'm doing that dismissive thing because in my mind, I'm like, well, they're wrong. So, so who cares, right? But that's but on the other hand, I'm not so far gone, I guess, is that I can't recognize that they their feelings and their experiences about that subject are meaningful to them.
Well, just keep in
And I
mind,
need
some
to at
people would
least
say the
respect
Atavi
that.
are not an entertaining species that require 27 books.
I think it's
That's a bit of a minutiae
22
point, but
maybe now. But anyway, it's a good story.
so
Anyway.
yes, Sarah, it is absolutely obvious that it is
Show
nearly
notes,
impossible
people.
to explain a sensory. It's nearly impossible.
But that doesn't mean you can't. Yeah, but it doesn't mean you can't. And it doesn't mean if you are open to trying to understand that you can't at least reach, maybe not a full understanding, but at least reach a respect for
And
another
I
person's
would love to hit
experience.
100-mile-an-hour fastball, and I would love to try, and I won't ever. But I will still find enough satisfaction in watching a professional hit 100-mile-an-hour fastball, and that also should not be diminished. My enjoyment of another person's experience is also fine.
I like baseball.
That's
You can live
basically America
vicariously
post
through
World War
other
II.
people. I think that's fair. But
Yep,
there's
it's
also something to
overrated.
be said
Thanks,
for
Mom.
actually experiencing something yourself. And I think it is different. It's not overrated. It's just different.
Yep, yeah. Sorry, I'm gonna turn over my king now. That was a checkmate move.
And just want to say, Mom, you really should go and
I mean, why not? The world's
go
not
to
gonna be
these
here
Travel
places
forever.
and travel, right? I'm just saying. But
why? I guess she's old and tired and doesn't really care.
You're right.
So
They should get
maybe
into a
it would be
swingers
lost
club.
on her or him, your dad. You.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Enjoy that
that
mental
was-
image, audience of
we might lose
us.
our only Patreon supporter. I
But
again, we lost all of our audience at 5 minutes in.
we
But
already, yeah, I don't think we have to worry about it. They weren't here anyway. All right, well, yeah, that's all I got. Sorry for the weird topic, guys. Thanks, Mom. Could have been better. But that's for you guys to pick up my slack next time. So, yeah, thanks, Mom.